The savannah stretched before Esme like an endless, sun-drenched tapestry. Golden grasses rippled in the breeze, mimicking the gentle undulation of the nearby hills. Acacias, their flat tops silhouetted against the azure sky, stood like watchful sentinels. She'd never seen anything so raw, so untamed, so utterly beautiful. Birds she couldn't name called out in a chorus of exotic melodies, and the air hummed with the low thrum of life. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Reginald drawled, his voice snapping her out of her reverie. He stood beside their Land Rover, a smug expression plastered on his face. He thrived in this environment, this realm of conquest. Esme nodded, unable to articulate the depth of her feeling. It was more than magnificence. It was a profound connection, a sense of belonging she hadn't realized she craved. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, Reginald led her towards a large canvas tent discreetly tucked away in a copse of trees. "A little surprise," he said, his eyes gleaming with a predatory light. Inside, the tent was surprisingly lavish, furnished with plush rugs and antique furniture. But it was the far wall that stole Esme's breath, and not in a good way. Mounted heads stared down at her. A magnificent lion, its golden mane frozen in a silent roar. A graceful gazelle, its eyes wide with eternal terror. A hulking rhino, its horn grotesquely displayed. Trophies. Reginald's trophies. A cold dread coiled in Esme's stomach. "Impressive, eh?" Reginald said, his chest puffed out with pride as he gestured towards the macabre display. "Each one a testament to my skill." Esme took a step back, her hand flying to her mouth. You killed these beautiful creatures." Reginald chuckled, a harsh, grating sound. "Of course. What did you think I did out here?" "Took photographs." "But they're endangered," Esme stammered, her voice trembling. "Nonsense. There are plenty more where they came from," Reginald dismissed, waving his hand dismissively. "Besides, it's all perfectly legal. I have the necessary permits." Esme knew with a sickening certainty that he was lying. She'd seen the fleeting glances he exchanged with the local guides, the hushed conversations held in the dead of night. She'd heard the distant gunshots echoing through the savannah, far too frequent to be considered sustainable hunting. Tears welled in her eyes. "Reginald, please. You have to stop. This is wrong. It's barbaric." Reginald's face hardened. The charming facade crumbled, revealing the callousness beneath. "Don't be ridiculous, Esme. This is my passion. It's what I do." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "And you would do well to remember your place. You're my wife, not my conscience." I can't be a part of this," Esme whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I won't." Reginald's eyes narrowed. "So what are you saying, Esme? Are you threatening to leave me?" "I'm asking you to choose," she pleaded, her voice stronger now, fueled by a sudden surge of defiance. "Choose between your bloodlust and me." Reginald stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "A choice. There is no choice, Esme. You will come around." He turned his back to her. The hunt was on. He'd be out all night. He waved dismissively. "Don't wait up." Esme watched him go, her heart heavy with despair. As darkness enveloped the savannah, she felt utterly alone, surrounded by the trophies of Reginald's deceit. She knew with unwavering clarity that her dream of a shared life, a life of love and respect, had shattered into a million pieces. It was replaced by a stark reality. She was trapped not just in the savannah, but in a marriage built on lies and fueled by cruelty. A desperate act. Esme's fingers, slick with grease, gave a final wrench to the bolt on Reginald's hunting truck, but her tremor wasn't the usual subservient shiver. Tonight, a defiant tang of copper seasoned her dread. While Reginald regaled his cronies with tales of the kudu he intended to slaughter, she'd been poring over the engine's anatomy. She located the fuel line, a memory surfacing of old Angus, the groundskeeper, showing her how to coax life back into her father's tractor on the farm. A lifetime divorced from this brutal present. Now she'd meticulously loosened it, creating a slow, insidious leak, guaranteed to cripple the vehicle miles from the lodge. It was a gamble fueled by desperation. Reginald's callousness, his demeaning treatment of the savannah's magnificent creatures, had eroded her last shred of tolerance. The sunset bled across the horizon in shades of plum and crimson as Reginald emerged, rifle glinting, radiating whiskey fumes and puffed-up pride. "All set, darling," he slurred. Esme summoned a strained smile, bile rising in her throat. "Yes, Reginald. Ready." She averted her gaze. The falsehood coated her tongue like dust. He patted her cheek, a perfunctory gesture, wholly devoid of warmth. "Good girl. Don't wait up." The engine roared as he departed, a plume of dust swirling behind him, a portent hanging in the still air. Her pulse hammered a frantic rhythm. Had she crossed a line? What if he were injured? But the image of the kudu, its tender eyes wide, resurfaced, and her resolve solidified. Time stretched, an agonizing expanse. Esme haunted the veranda, the cool air offering scant relief from her mounting anxiety. The savannah's silence, usually a balm, pressed down, heavy with foreboding. Every snap of a twig, every mournful owl hoot, prickled her skin. She conjured images of Reginald stranded, spewing curses or worse, encountering dangers beyond a mere mechanical failure. Finally, an eternity later, just before the first hint of dawn, a distant grumbling broke the stillness. Her breath caught. She raced to the veranda's edge, straining to see. The truck lurched into view, sputtering and wheezing like a wounded animal. Behind the wheel, Reginald's face was a thundercloud. He slammed the door, the reverberation shattering the morning calm. Ignoring her presence, he stalked into the lodge, abandoning the stricken vehicle. A cold certainty gripped Esme. This was only the opening act. Betrayal in the night. The Land Rover choked, a metallic death rattle silencing the engine. Reginald's fist met the steering wheel with brutal force, the horns bleat a furious punctuation to his frustration. "Damn this infernal machine," he bellowed, grinding the key in vain. Only a feeble whimper answered. Rifle in hand, he levered himself out. The moon, a thin paring in the inky sky, offered scant assistance. "Esme! Oh." She materialized from the vehicle's rear, her face bleached white by the meager light. The flashlight beam knifed through the darkness as she held it aloft. Reginald wrestled with the bonnet, a stream of muttered curses accompanying his inspection. Minutes ticked by, thick with apprehension. Finally he straightened, his expression a gathering storm. "Fuel line's been tampered with," he bit out, his gaze pinning Esme. "Someone doesn't want us hunting." She flinched, recoiling as if struck. "Reginald, I swear I did nothing." "Why would I?" A harsh, mirthless sound escaped him. "Don't feign innocence, Esme. Your bleeding heart act is wearing thin. The way you flinch when I mention the hunt, the sudden fascination with constellations. You thought you could sabotage my evening, did you? Spoil my sport." Fear tightened its icy grip on Esme, yet she stood firm. "I couldn't condone the slaughter of those magnificent creatures any longer, Reginald. Not for amusement." His hand flashed out, connecting with her cheek. The impact sent her reeling. The flashlight skittered across the ground, plunging them into a world of deepening shadows. "You wretched, ungrateful girl. I rescued you, gave you everything, and this is my reward." He seized her arm, his fingers a painful clamp. "You presume to judge me, to stand on some imagined moral high ground? We'll see how high you stand out here alone." Esme twisted, struggling against his superior strength. He dragged her away from the immobile Land Rover, towards the whispering sea of tall grass. The savannah's symphony of nocturnal sounds intensified, the insistent drone of cicadas, the distant, mournful cry of a jackal. Panic constricted her throat. He shoved her forward, releasing his hold. "Walk," he ordered, his voice stripped of warmth. "Perhaps a dose of reality will cure you of your newfound compassion. A lesson in consequences." Turning on his heel, he stalked back to the vehicle, his form swallowed by the encroaching dark. Esme remained rooted, paralyzed by disbelief and mounting terror. Surely he wouldn't. The sputtering cough of the engine shattered any lingering hope. Headlights momentarily sliced through the night, branding her in their brief glare, before swinging away and accelerating into the darkness. Abandoned. Before her lay the savannah, an immeasurable expanse of silent menace. The frantic rhythm of her own heart was the only sound, a desperate drumbeat against the vast, indifferent stillness. Lost in the wild. The acacia thorns snagged at her silk trousers, each tear a fresh stab of regret. How could she have been so foolish? So convinced that her words, her pleas, would sway Alistair. The roar of his laughter still echoed in her ears, bouncing off the darkening baobabs as his Land Rover sped away, leaving her in a cloud of dust and despair. Esme pushed onward, the setting sun painting the savannah in hues of blood orange and bruised purple. Panic clawed at her throat. She'd been so focused on confronting Alistair, she'd paid no attention to the landmarks. Now, every gnarled tree looked the same, every rustle of grass a potential threat. The first sound came softly, a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the soles of her boots. Esme froze, her breath catching in her chest. It was distant but undeniably there. Then came another, closer this time, a sharp, yipping bark that sent shivers down her spine. Hyenas. She knew their reputation. Scavengers, opportunistic and relentless. She started to run, her expensive leather boots sinking into the soft earth. The sounds intensified, a cacophony of snarls, chirps, and rustling that painted a vivid picture of the dangers that lurked just beyond the veil of twilight. Fear lent her speed, but it also blurred her vision, turning familiar shapes into menacing shadows. The sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the savannah into near darkness. The temperature plummeted, and a cold wind whipped across the plains, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something else. Something wilder, more primal. The air thrummed with an energy that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She stumbled upon a rocky outcrop, a small cluster of boulders that offered a sliver of shelter. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Esme squeezed herself into a narrow crevice, the rough stone scraping against her skin. She huddled there, her body trembling, listening to the symphony of the night. The growls and barks were closer now, circling, testing. Desperation gnawed at her. Alistair wouldn't come back. She knew that with a sickening certainty. She was alone, utterly and completely alone, in a place that cared nothing for her pleas, her principles, or her naive belief in the goodness of man. All that mattered now was survival. She had to find shelter, a place to hide until dawn. But where? And how? A leopard's protection. The moon, a skeletal fingernail in the inky sky, offered little comfort. Shadows danced, transforming familiar thorn bushes into grotesque figures. Esme wrapped her arms tighter around herself, the chill seeping deep into her bones, a cold mirroring the dread in her heart. The snapping twig had been the first warning. Now she heard the unmistakable shuffle of padded feet on dry earth. Two pairs of eyes ignited in the darkness, glowing embers that snuffed out any remaining hope. Hyenas. They moved with a fluid, unsettling grace, their low guttural chuckles bouncing off the silence, a prelude to a gruesome symphony. Panic, a cold serpent, coiled around Esme's throat, choking her. She scanned the terrain, desperate for sanctuary. A stunted acacia, its branches gnarled and twisted, offered a meager promise of protection. She scrambled towards it, thorns tearing at her skin, a pain she barely registered. She squeezed herself behind the trunk, the rough bark scraping against her back. The hyenas circled, their unsettling laughter intensifying, their breath hot and fetid on the night air. She could smell their rank musk, a scent of decay and death. They were toying with her, savoring her fear. One of the hyenas, bolder than the other, crept closer, its teeth bared in a chilling grin. Saliva dripped from its jaws as it lunged, snapping at her exposed arm. Esme screamed, a sound swallowed by the vastness of the savannah. Then, a blur of gold and black erupted from the shadows. A roar, primal and terrifying, shattered the hyena's confidence. Leo. He landed between Esme and her tormentors, a magnificent predator, his muscles coiled and ready. His eyes, twin emeralds, burned with a fierce protectiveness. The hyenas, startled by the sudden appearance of the leopard, hesitated. They knew they were outmatched. Their bravado evaporated, replaced by a primal fear. With a chorus of frustrated yelps, they turned and fled, disappearing back into the darkness, their glowing eyes shrinking into nothingness. Leo remained, his gaze fixed on the retreating hyenas, his body still tense. Only when they were gone did he turn his attention to Esme. He approached cautiously, his movements fluid and graceful, his eyes studying her intently. He circled her slowly, sniffing the air, assessing the threat. Esme remained frozen, her heart pounding against her ribs. She didn't know what to expect. Would he turn on her now? Was she merely trading one predator for another? But as she looked into his eyes, she saw not malice, but a guarded curiosity. A flicker of something almost gentle. The thorn and the trust. The hyenas were gone, swallowed by the inky blackness, their unsettling laughter fading with the distance. Esme's breath still hitched in her chest, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Leo stood motionless, a sentinel against the night. He was magnificent, powerful, yet something seemed off. She squinted, her eyes slowly adjusting to the starlight. He was favoring his right forepaw, lifting it slightly as he shifted his weight. Hesitantly, she took a step closer. "Are you hurt?" she whispered, the sound swallowed by the vastness around them. He didn't react, just watched her with those golden eyes, gauging her intentions. Emboldened, Esme took another step, then another, until she was close enough to see it clearly. A long, wickedly sharp thorn embedded deep in the pad of his paw. Her heart clenched. She knew that pain. She'd plucked enough thorns from her own rose bushes back home. "That looks painful," she murmured, extending a hand slowly, palm up, offering not threat but assistance. Can I help?" Leo remained still, his muscles coiled, ready to spring. He lowered his head, sniffing her hand cautiously. Esme held her breath, praying he wouldn't bolt. Or worse. After what felt like an eternity, he lifted his head again, his gaze meeting hers. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Not trust, not yet, but perhaps acceptance. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly, and gently touched the fur around the wound. He flinched, a low growl rumbling in his chest, but he didn't pull away. "Easy," she soothed, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll be careful." Using her fingernails, she carefully worked at the skin around the thorn, trying to loosen its grip. It was slow, painstaking work, and each time he tensed, she paused, offering soft words of reassurance. Finally, with a gentle tug, the thorn came free. Leo jerked his paw back, licking at the small wound. Esme instinctively reached for her water bottle, uncapping it and pouring a small amount onto her hand. She offered it to him. "To clean it," she explained, though she doubted he understood. He hesitated, then lapped at the water, his rough tongue rasping against her skin. It was a strange, intimate moment, a connection forged in pain and vulnerability. When he finished, he looked at her again, a different light in his eyes now. Not gratitude, perhaps, but an acknowledgement of her help. He lowered his head slightly, a gesture that seemed almost like a bow. Then, he turned and began to walk away, not into the darkness, but towards the faint glow on the horizon, towards the rising sun. He didn't look back, but somehow Esme knew. She knew she was supposed to follow. With a surge of hope, she gathered her meager belongings and started after him. The thorn now a bridge, the pain a shared experience. The dawn felt less menacing with the leopard leading the way. Shelter and companionship. Leo's stride, imbued with newfound purpose, cut a path through the tall grass as dawn's fingers streaked the savannah. Esme trailed behind, each footfall a weighty echo of dwindling adrenaline and mounting fatigue. He guided her away from the reserve's familiar contours, venturing deep into the wild's raw expanse. Cicadas buzzed in a relentless chorus, a vibrant counterpoint to the whisper of wind through the savannah. As the day matured, the sun became a punishing hammer. Esme's throat felt like sandpaper, her lips cracked and bled. Leo halted beneath a spindly acacia, its meager shade offering scant reprieve. He nudged towards her the remains of an impala kill, a stark tableau of survival, a necessary horror. Esme ate sparingly, conserving the last dregs of her water. Using a torn strip from her linen shirt, she tended to Leo's injured paw with as much care as possible. He winced at her touch, yet remained still, golden eyes locked on her face. Another long haul brought them to it, a huddle of concrete structures, half consumed by the encroaching wilderness. Weather-beaten signs, paled by the sun, hinted at its original function. A research station abandoned to its fate. Though the main building was crumbling, one structure stood relatively intact, its metal door creaking ajar on protesting hinges. Leo nudged it wide, revealing a shadowed interior. Dust lay thick as grave clothes within. Toppled furniture, scattered documents, and rusted implements spoke of hurried flight. But vestiges of habitation remained. A cot sagged in the corner, a metal sink rusted quietly, and a few dented tins promised sustenance. It offered shelter. Esme devoted the initial days to cleansing the space, driven by an innate urge for order. She swept dust into swirling clouds, salvaged usable items, and wove a makeshift bed from tattered blankets. Leo observed her efforts, his presence a quiet encouragement. He'd vanish for hours, returning with small offerings, a scrub hare, a plump guinea fowl, which they shared in silence. Weeks melted into a cycle of sunrises and sunsets. Esme deciphered the moon's phases, distinguished the calls of each bird, and interpreted the savannah's subtle language. She confided in Leo, sharing her thoughts, her anxieties, and memories of a life now a fading echo. He listened, his amber gaze holding an ancient understanding. He was more than a leopard. He was a companion, a confidant, a silent sentinel. He was not sole Kerbridge. One evening, as they sat by a crackling fire, the air heavy with the perfume of burning wood, Esme truly observed Leo. The scar etching his brow, the proud carriage, the understated strength that radiated from him. A surge of something akin to affection, sharpened by gratitude, bloomed within her. She reached out, gently stroking his massive head. He leaned into her touch, a deep rumble resonating in his chest, a purr that spoke of trust. Amidst the heart of untamed nature, haunted by the ghosts of what was, Esme had stumbled upon something unexpected, a haven and an improbable bond. Justice and discovery. The stench hit Zola first. Rotting meat mingled with the metallic tang of old blood. Around the abandoned Land Rover, the savannah whispered a tale of carnage. The air hung heavy, disturbed only by the buzzing of flies feasting on discarded animal parts. Reginald Thornton's trophy hunting had escalated beyond anything they'd previously suspected. This wasn't sport. It was slaughter. "Check the tracks," Zola instructed, her voice tight with controlled fury. Two rangers moved off, their faces grim. She knelt beside a discarded rhino horn, its surface rough and stained. Each piece of evidence screamed Reginald's guilt. The call came an hour later. "He's at the airstrip attempting to leave," a ranger's voice crackled over the radio. "He's claiming diplomatic immunity," Zola snorted. "Diplomatic immunity doesn't cover butchering endangered species. Bring him in." Reginald arrived at the ranger station an hour later. His face flushed, his tailored safari suit rumpled. He swaggered in, radiating an aura of entitled indignation. "This is an outrage. I demand to speak to someone in charge." Zola stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "You're speaking to her, Mr. Thornton. You're under arrest for violating numerous wildlife protection acts, including illegal poaching and trafficking of protected species." His face contorted in disbelief. "You can't be serious. This is a misunderstanding." "Is it? We found your kill site. The rhino horn, the elephant tusks, the leopard skin. All point to you. The charade is over." As Reginald was being processed, another ranger arrived. His face etched with a mixture of bewilderment and concern. "Zola, you need to see this. At the abandoned outpost. There's something unusual." The outpost was a derelict shell, reclaimed by the encroaching bush. But within its crumbling walls, a different kind of story unfolded. Esme sat on a makeshift bed of woven grasses, tending to Leo. The leopard, no longer emaciated, regarded the rangers with wary intelligence. It was Esme's touch, however, that stunned them. She stroked Leo's head, her fingers disappearing into his thick fur. The leopard, in turn, nuzzled her hand, a low rumble vibrating in his chest. This wasn't the interaction between a person and a wild animal. It was something deeper, something symbiotic. Zola approached cautiously. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice softened by what she was witnessing. Esme looked up, her eyes wide but unafraid. "I'm Esme. And this is Leo. He saved me." Zola exchanged a look with the other rangers. They'd heard rumors, whispers of a woman living in the bush, protected by a leopard. They had dismissed them as folklore. Now, staring at the unbelievable scene before them, Zola knew that the savannah held secrets far stranger than they could have imagined. And Reginald Thornton, in his arrogance and greed, had unwittingly unveiled one of them. A new beginning. The Land Rover bucked over the uneven terrain, kicking up a cloud of red dust that momentarily obscured the rising sun. Esme gripped the roll bar, a smile playing on her lips. The familiar scent of dry grass and acacia filled her lungs, a welcome change from the sterile air of the city she'd left behind. "You sure about this, Esme?" Zola Mbeki, the head ranger, glanced over, her expression unreadable. Zola's eyes, the color of dark honey, reflected a cautious skepticism. "More sure than I've ever been about anything," Esme replied, her voice steady. She held Zola's gaze, determined to convey the depth of her commitment. "I know this land now, Zola. I understand it in a way I never thought possible. And I want to protect it." Esme spent the morning sharing her observations with the rangers. She pointed out subtle changes in animal migration patterns she'd noticed while lost, identified rare medicinal plants she'd learned to recognize, and even highlighted areas where poachers were likely to set traps, based on her husband's past behavior. The rangers listened intently, their initial reservations slowly dissolving into respect. Later that week, Zola assigned Esme to a patrol team. The work was grueling, involving long hours under the relentless sun, tracking animals and dismantling snares. Esme threw herself into it, learning quickly from Zola and the other rangers. She was surprised by her own resilience, by the satisfaction she found in contributing to something larger than herself. One evening, while patrolling a remote section of the park, they heard the unmistakable crack of a rifle shot. Zola immediately directed the team towards the sound, her movements swift and decisive. Esme followed close behind, her heart pounding in her chest. They found a rhino, downed and bleeding, its horn already hacked off. Two poachers were nearby, arguing over their bloody prize. As Zola and the rangers moved to apprehend them, a low growl echoed through the trees. Leo emerged from the shadows, his eyes burning with fury. The poachers froze, their bravado instantly replaced with terror. Leo didn't attack, but his presence was enough. He stood between them and the rhino, a silent guardian. Zola signaled her team to hold their fire. Esme stepped forward, her voice clear and firm. Leave. And never come back. The poachers, faces pale with fear, dropped their weapons and fled into the bush. Esme knelt beside the rhino, stroking its thick hide. It was still alive but barely. She looked at Leo, a silent understanding passing between them. She knew she couldn't save it, but she could make its last moments peaceful. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the savannah, Esme sat beside Leo, watching over the fallen rhino. The air was filled with the sounds of the night, the chirping of crickets, the distant call of a hyena. Leo nudged her hand with his head, a gesture of comfort. Esme leaned against him, feeling a surge of gratitude. She had found her purpose, her place in this wild and beautiful land. And she had found an unlikely ally in the heart of the savannah. They were two lost souls, bound together by a shared desire to protect this place, to give it a new beginning.